Let's talk about Dana Bash of CNN, who, in a conversation with pollster Frank Luntz, who I guess is considered a right of center pollster, she, I think, also just revealed a really problematic sentiment that just persists. It will never go away, despite years of reckoning with a lot of this from our media. So let's play the clip of Dana Bash.
Let's look specifically about the former president and the support before we get to the focus group that you did. The support that he has nationally has grown since February. 12 points since February. And DeSantis, who was just right behind him at a time, is now even further behind him. Who are these people who aren't part, maybe necessarily, of like that Trump core, what we call the Fifth Avenue Republicans, who, he famously says, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and those people will support me. But the people on top of that who are looking at everything that's going on, that happened on January 6th, and they're saying, okay, I'll throw my support behind Donald Trump.
The less educated you are, the more likely you are to support Donald Trump. Lower income, people who've been unemployed at some point in the last 5 years. It's a socioeconomic level that was once a Democratic voter, which is quite interesting. The people who've come over to the GOP, that gave them the majority in 2016, a lot of them, maybe 15%, have been voting Democrat in the past, and they were simply frustrated, fed up. They feel ignored, forgotten, even betrayed. And there's a level of anger there that brought them to Donald Trump because he represented and offered to be their voice and to speak for them. And what has happened is that group has actually grown over time.
There's a lot to unpack there, but I want to first say I think it's pathetic that Frank Luntz, an elite pollster, Kevin McCarthy's roommate, at least at one point, is the intermediary between Dana Bash and those voters, right? So you are going to talk about American politics every single day and ask with befuddlement to a Beltway pollster what explains something that if you went to a bar in Iowa, you could find out with much more context and texture in 5 minutes than if you sat in CNN's air-conditioned studio and talked with your intermediary between the people and you, Frank Luntz, like a multi-millionaire Beltway inside pollster. Dana Bash shouldn't have to ask Frank Luntz this question with confusion. And in fact, the idea, the notion that she's confused by it in and of itself is just, I don't know, I want to use the word frustrating, but it's beyond frustrating. I mean, it's pathetic, it's sad, and it's a huge story of what's wrong in American media right now because that same question was being asked repeatedly in 2015, not even just 2016, 2015, after Donald Trump said what he said about John McCain, after Donald Trump said what he said, Russia, if you're out there, let's see those emails, after Donald Trump said, if I were president, Hillary Clinton, you'd be in prison. He has all of these moments throughout 2015 and 2016. During his presidency, we were sort of breathlessly asked who would still support him after the Stormy Daniels stuff. Who are these Christian voters who are electing a man who who seems to be of such poor character and doesn't truly care about Christians, as though they're all rubes that don't understand Donald Trump is in no ways an evangelical Christian. He's the man who famously at Liberty University referred to, quote, 2 Corinthians instead of 2 Corinthians. He's not a man. He says the Bible is his favorite book. I think that's a Trump quote once, but I'm not confident that he reads it all that often. And I don't think a lot of Christians have been, Christian conservatives, evangelical conservatives, white evangelicals have been persuaded otherwise. And again, the answer to this question is perfectly obvious, and it's one that Dana Bash should actually be asking Democratic pollsters. Why do Republicans, who are not, as she refers to, those Fifth Avenue Republican voters, the people who stick with him time and again, why do they go with Donald Trump? Because their alternative for years has been Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. That's their alternative. Joe Biden won't even get out there and debate, despite the fact that a lot of his party wants him to at least debate. Marianne Williamson posted a poll yesterday showing Robert F. Kennedy at about 13% of the vote and her around 10%. So that's a quarter of the Democratic electorate. Joe Biden was around 63% in that poll. That's about a quarter of the Democratic electorate right now, openly supporting another candidate other than the sitting president of the United States. Joe Biden is falling asleep in meetings. He's fumbling all kinds of things, mixing up all kinds of things in ways that just continue to test the limits, the possibilities of how incapacitated a president possibly can be. And yet, That's why it just is so abundantly obvious. The media doesn't ask those questions of Joe Biden, and so then they end up looking like this, trying to figure out why people who are not necessarily MAGA rally goers are voting for Donald Trump. And it's because the media has shielded the Democrats from criticism. It's because the media has, in fact, allowed Joe Biden to do things that take those swing Republican voters and put them in Trump's camp. They just have allowed that, facilitated it in so many different ways, shielded Democrats from reasonable criticism to the point where, yeah, a whole lot of people are pulling the lever for Donald Trump when their alternative is Joe Biden. It's just so obvious. Plus, it's equally obvious. I mean, Saagar and Crystal talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I think it's worth repeating. The New York Times actually does, they did a poll with Siena that came out, as Crystal and Saagar discussed, where they were able to break the Republican electorate into three groups. The MAGA base, so that would be Dana Bash's Fifth Avenue Republicans. Donald Trump famously said I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and people would still vote for me. Persuadable voters, and then voters who are not open to Trump. So of the Republican electorate, you have 37% MAGA base, 37% persuadable, and 25% not open to Trump. So that 37% of persuadable voters is really who Dana Bash is talking about. And if we look at that 37% of persuadable voters, they less of them earn $100,000 a year or more, and less of them have a college degree than people who are not open to Trump. And that continues, as Frank Luntz highlighted rightfully in that segment, that continues to decline the more supportive you are of Donald Trump. And the one that really stood out for me is this is their view on the issue of whether America is in danger of failing. 80% of the MAGA base says yes, America is in danger of failing. 61% of persuadable voters say America is in danger of failing. 37% of that chunk that are not open to Donald Trump, only 37% of them say America is in danger of failing. And so why then would people continue to support Donald Trump in the last 6 or so months after, as Dana Bash says, this information, did they not watch Liz Cheney's select committee hearings? How could they possibly be coming to this conclusion? Is it because they're simply ignorant? Is it because they're bad people? They're bigoted, they're racist, or they just simply don't believe anything we journalists, the vanguard, the interpreters of truth and reality are telling them? That has to be the only explanation. Actually, it's because life is not so great outside of the air-conditioned CNN newsroom. That's pretty clear. Again, if she had just taken the time, instead of asking Frank Luntz, maybe went into Trump country or the suburbs where people are, those parents in Dearborn, Michigan, evangelicals and Muslims are coming together and talking about books like Genderqueer being in libraries for really young people, and then seeing the teachers union that is allied very closely with the Biden administration, defended by the Biden administration, defend books like that. The alternative, and this is a real problem, like the Fifth Avenue quote has always been interesting because as pathetic as that is, that it's our state of affairs right now, the alternative, so many people don't see it as being better. And that is fundamentally, I think, continues to be a huge blind spot for the media that knows a lot of powerful people in Democratic circles, trusts a lot of powerful people in Democratic circles, actually trusts a lot of people in never Trump Republican circles who are of their same income class level and also just say, look around you, America is not in danger of failing when they don't live in communities that are ravaged by the opioid crisis and deindustrialization. I'll add, though a lot of you may disagree, the sexual revolution. When they don't see that every single day, you obviously are going to struggle to, I think, really fully come to terms with that. And it's not just post-January 6th. This has been happening since Donald Trump proved to be one of the most bizarre people who has ever run for office in the history of American politics since 2015. And they still have not been able to sort of wrap their heads around this phenomenon. And I think part of that is because they're asking Frank Luntz. Ryan, what did you make of Dana Bash's befuddlement in this context? Maybe I'm being uncharitable. Maybe she was just asking a reasonable question. I think it's fine to ask that question, although my impression is that she's genuinely stumped and confused by the phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your job.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.